I never believed in legends, not really. I always thought they were just cultural leftovers, spooky stories passed down to keep kids out of the woods or away from strangers. That was until I went to Mexico last summer. What I experienced in that small rural village near the Sierra Madre Mountains, it still haunts me, and not just in dreams. Something came back with me. Something took part of me, and it never gave it back. I was supposed to be doing a short documentary on regional folklore for my YouTube channel. Real stories, local myths, supernatural encounters from remote corners of the world. Episode 2. Simple enough. I had planned a 3-day stay in a quiet mountain town outside of Durango, surrounded by forest, wild terrain, and almost no signal. I'd spoken to a few locals online ahead of time. They were welcoming, curious, and even excited to share their traditions on camera. But the moment I stepped off the dusty shuttle bus, I knew something was off. The air was dry and thin. The wind had a strange, metallic taste to it, and no birds, not one chirp or flutter. Just the low hum of the sun and the creaking of distant trees. A boy, maybe 8 or 9, stood near the old church, watching me with wide eyes. He didn't blink, didn't move, just stared until an older woman, his grandmother I assumed, pulled him away by the arm and muttered something harsh under her breath. That's when I heard it the first time, a whistle, soft, slow, just 3 notes. Rising, falling, then rising again. It came from somewhere past the edge of the village, near the brush and the thorn trees. I paused and looked, but saw no one. Maybe a farmer, maybe a kid. I didn't make much of it. My host family, the Rodriguez, were kind. Middle-aged couple with 2 adult sons who worked in the nearby mines. Their home was simple but warm. Clay walls, tiled roof, Virgin Mary paintings on every corner. They offered me spicy pozole and tamarind water, and after dinner, I asked if they knew any stories about local spirits or legends. That's when everything changed. Senora Rodriguez went pale. Her spoon clattered against her bowl. "You shouldn't ask about him," she said softly. "Some things, listen." I laughed awkwardly, trying to ease the tension, but the room stayed heavy and still. I tried to redirect. Maybe something like La Llorona, the weeping woman, but even that didn't help. "No," the husband said. "Worse, much worse. La Llorona cries for her children. El Silbon, he comes for anyone, especially those who mock him." "El Silbon?" I asked, leaning forward. "What does that mean?" They exchanged a glance, as if deciding whether or not to tell me. Then the husband sighed, pushed back his chair, and stood. "I'll show you." He disappeared into the back room and returned with a framed photo, yellowed with age. It showed a young man, maybe 20, standing beside a well. His smile was faint but genuine. What struck me was the woman next to him, blurry, almost translucent, dressed in white, no feet. Her face was wrong, twisted in grief. The image had clearly been printed from an old film camera, but that didn't explain the warping around her. "That's my brother," he said. 2 weeks after this photo, he vanished, left his boots by the door. No note, no body. But the night before, we heard the whistle. He tapped his ear. 3 notes, always the same. I was frozen. The air in the room had chilled despite the heat outside. "Is it like a ghost?" I asked. "No, he was cursed," the Senora said. "Long ago. He killed his father. Some say for beating his mother. Others say for denying him me. Doesn't matter. His grandfather tied him to a post and let the dogs loose. Afterward, they burned him. But the spirit stayed. He carries a sack of bones now. His father's, some say. Others say it's all the people he's taken. You hear the whistle, and if it sounds close, you're safe. But if it sounds far..." She didn't finish the sentence. That night, I set up my equipment in the guest room. I told myself I'd start filming interviews the next morning and maybe explore the outskirts for pre-roll. Despite the eerie stories, I was still excited. Legends are supposed to feel creepy, right? That's what makes them good content. But around 1:30 a.m., I woke up suddenly, not from a noise, but from silence. Utter, complete silence. Not even the bugs were chirping. I sat up slowly, heartbeat steady but rising. I thought maybe a power outage, but no. My camera charging light was still on, but it came. 3 notes, far away, very far, but crystal clear, as if the wind carried them perfectly to my ear. I froze. Something about it felt wrong, artificial, like someone pretending to whistle like a human, but getting the rhythm just slightly off. Like it was being repeated, replayed, looped. I reached for my phone. 1:42 m, no signal. I told myself it was just a drunk local or some stupid village prank for the outsider, but I couldn't shake the sudden dryness in my throat, like all the moisture had been sucked out of the air. I got up, peeked through the slatted wooden window. Nothing, just trees. And mist. There hadn't been mist before. I turned to lie back down and stopped cold. Someone was standing in the hallway, just beyond my half-closed bedroom door. A tall silhouette, lanky, arms too long, holding something over their shoulder like a bag. They weren't moving, just standing. Listening, I didn't move, I didn't breathe. Then the whistle came again, but this time it was inside the house. 3 notes. So soft, it could have come from behind me. I spun around. Nothing. When I looked back at the door, the hallway was empty. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. By morning, I had convinced myself it had all been a dream. Sleep paralysis, maybe, or my mind playing tricks in a strange new place. That's what I kept telling myself as I poured black coffee into a chipped mug and forced down a few pieces of stale pan dulce the Signora had left on the counter. The Rodriguez house felt normal again. Birds chirped outside, the heat was returning, and the living room smelled faintly of incense and lemon cleaner. But underneath it all, there was still this weight I couldn't shake. A sense of being watched, studied, like something unseen was hiding just behind every shadow, waiting. I didn't bring it up over breakfast. I didn't want to spook them. And honestly, I wasn't ready to say it out loud. Instead, I told them I was heading out to the town square to meet with a few locals who had agreed to speak on camera about traditional folktales. I packed up my gear and left, the whistle still echoing faintly in the back of my mind. The air outside was hot and dry, but I noticed something odd. No one was walking on the streets. Not even the dogs. The village felt paused. I met my first contact, an older man named Mateo, under the awning of a small tienda. He was thin, hunched over, and his eyes were the color of ash. When I introduced myself and mentioned I wanted to ask about regional legends, he didn't hesitate. He didn't smile either. Instead, he motioned to the bench beside him and said, "You're asking about El Silbon, aren't you?" I froze. I hadn't said anything about that name yet. He nodded at my silence. They always come, the outsiders. They always want to poke the story, but some stories poke back. He lit a cigarette with shaking fingers, the smoke curling around his face like a veil. Then he told me the version of the tale he had grown up with. El Silbon was once just a boy, he said. A spoiled, angry child who demanded meat one night while his mother was cooking. When she said there was none, he flew into a rage and killed his father for denying him food. Some say he slit his throat. Others say he beat him to death with a pestle. Either way, he dragged the body into the woods and fed the pieces to the family's dogs. When his grandfather discovered what had happened, he cursed the boy, tied him to a post, let the dogs tear at his flesh, then burned what was left of him. But his soul didn't burn. Now he wanders, Mateo said, flicking ash into the dirt. Forever hungry, forever cursed to carry the bones of his father and of those he takes. He leaned closer, voice low. They say you hear him before you see him, always whistling, always the same notes, and if it sounds far away, you need to run. I asked why. If it sounds far, shouldn't that mean he's far? Mateo's eyes met mine. That's the curse. That's how he tricks you. His whistle is backwards. If it sounds distant, he's already near. A cold shiver crept down my spine. I thought about the sound I heard the night before, distant, soft, almost dreamlike. I wanted to tell him, to ask what happens if he finds you. But I didn't. Something about Mateo's expression told me I didn't want to know the answer just yet. I wrapped the interview and thanked him, leaving with shaky hands and an uneasy gut. As I walked back through the village, I passed the church again. That same little boy from before was standing by the gate, alone this time. When he saw me, he raised his hand and pointed toward the woods. He whistles when he's hungry, the boy said. I stopped. What did you say? He took my cousin last year. They never found her. Just her dress and her shoes. He leaves things sometimes. Things that smell like you. He paused, tilting his head. Have you smelled the dirt yet? I didn't know how to answer. I just walked away, trying to shake the feeling of dread curling into my chest like smoke. I told myself I was just tired, overwhelmed, falling victim to the power of a good ghost story. But the way the boy had said it, calm, matter of fact, like he'd repeated it many times, made it feel like more than just a tale. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I kept the lights on, my gear packed, and my boots by the door. My voice felt scratchy, like I was coming down with something. Every time I tried to speak aloud, my words came out dry, brittle, like they didn't belong to me. At around 2:00 a.m., the power cut out. Just gone, total blackness. Then came the whistle, not from outside. Not from the woods, from the hallway. 3 notes, same pattern. But this time, it didn't sound far. It sounded behind the wall. I reached for my flashlight, fingers trembling so badly I could barely press the switch. The moment I clicked it on, I saw movement, something shifting under the gap in the bedroom door. Slow, like fingers dragging across the tile. I backed up to the far wall, heart pounding like a war drum in my chest. I whispered to myself, this isn't real. This isn't real. It's just a story, a legend. And then it whispered back, a voice, not my own. But in my voice, come see, 2 words, that's all. But it felt like they'd been spoken from inside my lungs. I didn't open the door. I just sat there, frozen, flashlight beam trembling against the wooden panels like it might burn a hole through. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the whistle, worse than the voice. It was dense, heavy, a kind of silence that presses against your eardrums like you're deep underwater. Minutes passed, or maybe hours, I don't know. All I remember is that at some point I blinked, and the shadow under the door was gone. When morning came, it was like the night had been wiped clean. The lights flickered back on. The senora bustled around the kitchen like nothing had happened, humming and frying eggs in too much oil. Even the birds were chirping again. But I didn't feel normal. I didn't feel awake. It was like part of me had been left behind in that dark hallway, still crouched by the wall, still listening. I barely touched my food. Every time I tried to speak, my throat burned. My voice came out raw and cracked, like I'd been screaming all night, but I hadn't made a sound, at least. Not that I remembered. I decided I had to leave the village. I wasn't thinking clearly, but I knew I wasn't safe. I packed my gear into my rental car, told the senora I was heading out for interviews, and drove toward the next town over anywhere that put distance between me and that house, between me and that voice. The roads twisted through thick trees and scorched fields. The GPS dropped out 5 minutes in. The heat warped the windshield. And yet, all I could focus on was the way my voice felt like it was slipping. Like every word I spoke took more effort. Like something inside me was getting tired of letting me speak. I stopped at a roadside shop to buy bottled water and painkillers. The man at the counter stared at me too long when I said hello. He asked if I was sick. I said no. He asked again, more quietly this time, if I'd heard the whistle. My heart stuttered in my chest. I nodded once. That's all I could manage. He didn't say anything more. Just handed me a worn wooden charm, something strung with bones and a black thread, and told me not to speak after dark. Not at all. Not a word. He only takes what you give him, he said. Don't give him your voice. I didn't want to believe any of this. I didn't come here expecting real monsters. I came for stories. But something was happening. Something I couldn't explain. My voice wasn't just weak, it was fading. Like it didn't belong to me anymore. Like something else was borrowing it. That night, I stayed in a cheap inn with stone walls and a thin mattress. I locked the windows. Stuffed towels under the door. Didn't speak, didn't hum. Not even to myself. And for a while, I thought maybe that would be enough. But at exactly 2:13 a.m., I heard it again. The whistle, closer. I sat up slowly, hand already on the flashlight. But this time, the beam didn't work. The batteries were fresh. I checked them twice. Still, the light refused to flick on. The whistling didn't stop. It moved through the room. It was like the air itself was making the sound vibrating with that slow 3-note pattern. Not music, not even breath. Just presence, and then something touched the edge of the bed. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My voice was gone. I didn't even have time to think. I bolted from the mattress, ran barefoot out of the room, down the hallway, and out into the empty night. The innkeeper yelled something behind me, but I didn't hear it. My heart was pounding too loud. I ran to my car, locked the doors, and sat in silence until the sky began to turn gray. When I looked in the mirror, I saw something on my neck. A handprint, faint, like a bruise not yet fully bloomed. 5 long fingers, one across my throat. It was only then that I realized something else. I hadn't spoken aloud since sunset, but in my camera bag, my microphone had been recording the entire night. I don't remember pressing the button, but the recorder was full. I pressed play. At first, there was silence, then static. Then my own voice, but it wasn't me. The words were wrong. They were fragmented, stitched together like broken thoughts. He's coming. I let him in. It's my turn now. And then laughter, not human. Not even animal. It was like something trying to sound close to human, trying to wear the shape of it, but not quite getting it right. I deleted the recording. I don't know why. Panic, maybe, shame, or fear that if I listened again, it would say something else. Something meant only for me. I stayed in the car until the sun rose completely, then I drove. I didn't care where. I just had to keep moving. But every mile I put between me and the village, something inside me felt like it was unraveling. Like threads were being pulled loose from the seams of my mind. Because no matter how fast I drove, I could still hear it. That damn whistle, inside my ears, inside my head. Or worse, inside my own voice. I don't know how I ended up back at the village. But when I turned down the dirt path lined with crooked mesquite trees and saw the cracked welcome sign of the village again, I knew I hadn't escaped. I'd been brought back. The senora was waiting on the porch like she'd never left it. Her eyes met mine, tired and knowing. She didn't ask why I returned. She only pointed toward the hills and said one thing. He always brings them back. You need to finish this now. Before he finishes you? I don't remember packing. I don't remember saying goodbye. But the next thing I knew, I was hiking the trail behind the village, where the old path wound past a dried-out riverbed and into the foothills. The air changed as I climbed. It got heavier, wetter, like something was breathing just beneath the soil. The trees grew twisted and close together, tangled in thorny vines. And then the silence returned. Not quiet, true silence. No birds. No wind, Even my footsteps seemed to sink into the earth without a sound. I didn't bring a flashlight this time. I didn't bring a camera. I brought nothing that could be used against me. Just a charm around my neck, the one the shopkeeper gave me. Bones and thread and something I didn't dare look at too closely. Then, in the center of a clearing, I found him. Or it. I don't know what to call it, even now. It stood with its back turned to me, impossibly tall and thin. A burlap sack hung over one shoulder, stretched heavy with something that squirmed. Bones, maybe. Or something worse. Its clothes looked like scraps of burial cloth, shredded and stained, and its head, it was wrong, too small. Like it had shriveled under the weight of the grief it carried. It didn't have a face. Or maybe it had too many, all layered in shadow. And it was whistling, that same slow, haunting melody, the one that sounded far when it was close. The moment I stepped into the clearing, it stopped. The air snapped still, and then it turned toward me. There were no eyes, just two sunken hollows that seemed to drag light inward, not reflect it. A voice, almost childlike but broken, echoed inside my skull. "You called me with your voice?" My knees buckled. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Every instinct screamed to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. It stepped closer, and with every movement, I felt the world warp around us. The sky dimmed, the ground throbbed like a heartbeat, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear my own voice whispering. Not from my mouth, from inside its sack. It reached out a hand, long, yellowed fingers with too many joints, and hovered at inches from my throat. "Your words are full of sorrow," it crooned. "That's why I kept them." I gasped, and it sounded foreign, like someone else trying to breathe through me. My vocal cords ached. My mouth moved, but only fragments came out, like glass cracking beneath pressure. Why me?" It leaned closer, breath like dust and rot. "Because you listen." Suddenly, I remembered the recorder. Not just the one I'd carried, all of them. Years of interviews, stories, voices, the pain I'd collected, preserved, retold. I wasn't just speaking, I was channeling. And something had been listening back. I reached for the charm around my neck. It was burning hot now, searing against my skin. The bones trembled. The thread snapped. The creature reeled back. The air fractured. I woke up at dawn, lying at the edge of the clearing. The sun barely kissed the hills. My throat was on fire. My hands were shaking. But I was alive, and for the first time in 2 days, I could speak, barely, raspy. But mine, the sack was gone. So was he, or so I thought. I told myself I was free. That's what you're supposed to do, right? When it's over, when the screaming stops, when the night lifts, when your feet find their way back to familiar ground, you tell yourself you made it. You tell yourself it was a dream, a fever, a trick of the forest. You repeat it until the lie becomes more comforting than the truth. I returned to the city 2 days later. My flight back was quiet. No coughing, no crying babies, no delays, just silence. Almost too much silence. No matter how loud the cabin got, I felt disconnected from it, like my ears were underwater. Or maybe like someone else was listening in my place. My voice, though, had come back, mostly. It was hoarse, like I'd smoked a pack a day for 30 years, but it worked. And after what I'd seen, after what took it, I was just grateful to have it back. I buried the charm in a church courtyard as soon as I landed. I don't know if it helped or made things worse, but I didn't want to risk carrying a single piece of that place with me. No bones, no curses, no whispers. I wanted it over. But some things don't stay buried. 3 days after I got home, I heard it again. Faint, just before dawn, a whistle. Not a tune, more like a distant, high-pitched breath. Soft, lingering. I froze under my covers and waited for it to stop. It didn't. Instead, it grew fainter. Which, if you remember what the villagers told me, meant it was close, right outside. The next night, it came again, then again. Always at the same time, 2:17 a.m. That number means nothing to me. But it keeps showing up now, in the microwave, on my phone, on the stove. I even woke up once to see it scratched into the condensation on my bathroom mirror. I stopped sleeping. I told myself I needed rest, but how can you sleep when the silence has shape? When it waits behind your door and watches through the windows? I started recording again, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to prove I wasn't losing my mind. But every file came back empty, or worse. Not empty, but wrong. My voice warped and reversed, muttering phrases I never said. The most common one, I brought him. I didn't remember saying it, but when I played it on loop, something inside me trembled. It wasn't just fear. It was recognition. I started dreaming about him, not nightmares, memories, or maybe visions. He stands at the foot of my bed some nights, not moving, just breathing and whistling, slowly, sadly. And then there's the thing I haven't told anyone, not even myself, not really. Sometimes when I speak now, I hear two voices, one layered beneath mine, just a split-second echo, but enough. Like something is repeating what I say from inside me. I visited a doctor. They scanned my throat, my lungs, all clean. But as the nurse took her notes, she suddenly asked, "Is someone else in the room?" We were alone. I tried to laugh it off, but my laugh didn't sound right. It was hollow, empty. And then one night, I recorded myself sleeping, just to see what else was happening. I set my phone on the nightstand, turned off the lights, and hit record. When I listened back the next morning, my body went cold. It started with breathing, heavy, labored, then footsteps, pacing just beyond the mic range, then a voice. My voice, but I wasn't speaking. It whispered, "She brought me. Now I live here." And at the end of the recording, a low whistle, right next to the microphone. I haven't published this story. Not yet. People would say I'm crazy, a hoax, a horror addict making things up for clicks. But if you've made it this far, if you're still listening, you need to understand something. This wasn't a myth. It wasn't some Mexican campfire tale. It wasn't folklore or hallucination or sleep paralysis. Silbon is real, and he doesn't just take voices. He becomes them. I don't talk much anymore, not because I'm afraid, but because I don't always know whose voice will answer back.